Minor.
It's LSC, that's where I work.
On and on.
There you go.
LSC Communications.
And then you have like.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Minor's
You
fully
can
retired.
leave the bench and somebody replaces them. They're out.
Oh, Dan,
Hey,
yeah.
that's a lot of shit. What, 3 years? Yeah, a lot of turnover on the bench too. That's like 6 different guys or whatever it was.
No, he works in the press room.
Yeah,
Yep, he's a freshman.
Mike Reed.
And he's getting ready to go back to nights. He's been on days, but days doesn't end till 7 o'clock.
Sutton's gone and Chad Minor's replaced.
Hey, that's right, that's right. That's
7 to 7 is what hurts him. You flip the front of the week and the back end of the week.
Everybody that spent a fortune running probably got involved eventually.
Friday, well, all
Well,
year's
that's a
gone,
big part
but
of the.
you've been.
I hated to see him.
Yeah, Palmer's missing this week, I'll
I don't know
be
if
presiding this week, yes, this
You talking about
Friday.
Don Hampton or what?
I'm teaching summer school right now.
Red Bulls will be a good.
I leave the house at about 6:45.
I've heard that. I just don't know.
So it's a pretty big day for me.
Yeah, I found out something
Same
interesting about
classroom
Dan
all day.
Minor.
today. I guess he used to be one of the Lake City
It's
Ski
just I get-
Club classes.
It's 3.5 weeks. of
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, he did that till he was about 40.
But that's why
I didn't
come
either.
last
I was
Friday, 'cause
telling somebody at work how I went out there last night.
every hour is
Back
a
in
day
the
of school.
day,
So
Yeah, the practice sessions are opened up to the public, and there must have been
A lot of
about
respect for Dan.
500 people.
Yeah, I know. Near my house. I can hear them from my house, yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody about that, and they told me, well, you know, Dan was in that. And I'm like, nope.
In a smaller community. in Sutton,
When my students want to walk down here, I'm at Edgewood, they want to come down here and watch it. I said,
How old's your uncle?
he knows
so maybe I'll bring
what
those kids and.
I know Jake.
Yeah, I don't know how easy it is in a small town to recuse yourself because you go.
In fact, I've got Jim's old desk.
Well, he certainly has.
It's not in his office, but I've got his desk. I disassembled it and put it up in my office. I like it. He's got a nice big wooden desk.
Share the.
Well, he was worried about the
share that
Spanish
love
hooking up
and,
with
DJ
any Catholics
Sidler
in
and
over
doing this stuff.
South Carolina.
Yeah, there's probably still I was told to go by that clock. and do that.
wrong.
It's slow.
There it is, 7:01 it says. Well, with all the votes, we'll begin the meeting. Welcome to the June 13, 2020 Warsaw Plan Commission meeting. Approval of the minutes. Mr. President, I've read the minutes, and if there are no further questions or comments, I'd move to approve. I heard there were some corrections, and so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jim Gast. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone in opposition? Unfinished business. Justin?
No unfinished business.
Thank you, sir. New business, 06/01/2022, preliminary and final. Justin, would you give us the facts, please?
Correct. So the preliminary and final plat for the Hyman subdivision has been submitted in a timely fashion and reviewed for its conformity to the subdivision control ordinance.
Can we see, is that mic working at all?
Maybe I need to speak up a
There it
little bit.
is.
Yeah.
The proposed plat meets the development standards for a subdivision within an R1 zoning district. The petitioner is proposing to subdivide a 2-acre tract of land into one lot that is 1.6 acres with an existing residence, and lot 2 will be 1.4 acres with an existing accessory structure. There'll be a 15-foot strip of land that extends from lot 2 to the east to a parcel that the petitioner currently owns that'll connect those two parcels. They just wanted that for access to their accessory structure. I recommend that the Plan Commission grant preliminary and final approval for the plat as presented.
Thank you, sir. Before we open it, is there any questions, comments from the commission?
I just want to say I used to live out there, so I know where it is, and this makes perfect sense, even if it looks odd on paper. It makes perfect sense that she wants to do it this way.
I had the exact same thoughts.
Yeah.
Justin, I'd wonder, are there any, or would there be any reason to limit how, the improvements that could be made on that access strip? I mean, could that be made into a driveway? Would that be a problem if it were to be?
I don't see it creating a major issue because they, in theory, any of those things could occur in its current condition. So, I mean, if the Plan Commission saw fit, they could potentially look at doing something like that, but I don't think it would make a difference one way or another, because the way the parcels are now, if somebody wanted to pave that section back there, they could.
Okay.
So,
Do you have a concern now, Aaron?
I don't particularly have a concern, I just was wondering if there would be yeah, I don't think there needs to be a concern.
All right, any other comments or questions? Thank you, Justin. We'll open it to the public. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone who'd like to speak in opposition? Would you like to say anything?
It's not my choice to do it this way, but it's the only way I can do it. It'll never be paid. It'll be transparent that it's, no one will even know what's there, that's true.
Fair enough, okay. With that, we'll close it to the public. Any other thoughts or concerns, questions, motions?
I think this is where Ms. Quant steps up, doesn't she?
This is usually her role,
This is
yes.
her role, yeah.
All
One
right.
does it
Ms.
better.
Klotz.
I'd make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for 2022-0601.
So moved for the preliminary, seconded by
I'll second.
my good Vice President. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? Thank you, Rick. And Ms. Quant?
I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules so that we can vote on the final plat.
So moved, seconded by
I'll
Rick
second
again.
that.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? We have now questioned the rules.
I would make a motion that we approve case number 2022-0601 on the second and final reading.
Second.
Seconded by Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? That carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Eloquently said. You're getting so good at that, don't you? I tell you.
All done, Judy. You can go home.
I take it you're happy with that,
I
okay?
am very happy.
All right, great.
And Vicki Ringenberg is your
One thing
neighbor?
I am unhappy about though, is I have to pay $70 to run an ad in the paper.
Yeah.
That is outrageous.
You see the cost of paper.
Noted.
The thing's this big and nobody even looks at it anyway.
3,000 and some odd people. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right. We should probably add that to the daycare ordinance recommendation. Can we tag that on as a subset?
I think it's
That
a
shouldn't
legal
happen.
requirement, so our
Is that a
attorney.
rider we could put on there? Do I need city attorney approval for that?
I think he's mocking you now. I would.
I know.
I am not. I think that's wrong. I agree. I think it's wrong. I don't think that's fair at all. I am total agreement with that. I was not mocking at all.
Interest on the 70, I mean, really? Okay,
I agree.
thank you.
I agree. We'll make sure that hits the paper at least. For one of them.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna do the chicken thing?
Plymouth's doing the chicken.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw
Oh, I didn't
that.
know that, okay.
And somebody else was, I think there was Plymouth and somebody else, like Milford or something. Okay, Justin, I think we've got a daycare ordinance recommendation that you've authored, sir?
Yeah, unless you guys want to discuss chickens.
No.
No,
No.
We've already done that.
no.
All right, so today we're going to talk about our recommendation for the daycare ordinance, and it's an adjustment to permitted uses for the city's zoning ordinance. So that's where you guys are involved. So tonight, what I'm looking for is just a recommendation, and I'll take that recommendation if it's favorable to the city council. So we can have as much of a discussion tonight as we'd like. We could table it. You could make a motion to give a favorable recommendation or decline to give a recommendation for it. So.
And it's only for R3 and C2, as I recall.
Correct. So I'll go through these comments and then we can discuss it and figure out what you guys would like to do. So, city is addressing barriers for residents related to childcare. A committee was formed to engage with childcare providers to see what specific obstacles prevent them from fulfilling their mission. Practical difficulties related to the permissiveness of the city's municipal code were noted during these discussions. A daycare center currently needs a use variance to locate within an R1, C2, C3, C4, or C5 zoning district, and a special exception to locate within an R2 or an R3 zoning district. So regardless of the zoning district, those wishing to open a daycare center are required to receive approval through the Board of Zoning Appeals. With the current conditions of the real estate market, child care providers are faced with two alternatives. A, the desired property is purchased before they can apply for a variance, or B, they purchase the property potentially risking thousands of dollars if the variance is denied. The Child Care Committee has recommended the attached amendment to the city's municipal code. This change would make daycares permitted by right in R3 and C2 zoning districts. Those wishing to operate it within the city would still need to fulfill all applicable state regulations and local requirements for parking, square footage, and square footage minimums related to how many children they watch. But we hope this change will create more certainty for daycare centers and as well as allow more of them to open in our community because it's definitely a much needed amenity for our residents. So with that, let me know if you have any questions regarding the change or anything like that.
Justin, would you review the letters, like what kinds of dwellings are in R1 and R1 and R2 and R3 and?
Yeah, so basically R1 through R3, you could look at that as, and we don't actually have any RR1 zones.
I didn't think we did.
But we still have that zone. But R1, R2, R3, R1 is where you picture, the single-family homes. They're kind of just on a little bit larger of a lot, but it's less dense. And then as you go to R2, it's a little bit more dense. And R3 with what you'd see along Center Street and more of the older downtown neighborhoods that are more dense. So that's generally how those work out. And the commercial districts are similar, just it gets a little heavier as you go into the bigger C districts. So that, hopefully that helps.
So what kind of district is a mixed neighborhood that has some single-family homes, some apartments,
So that-
some duplexes?
That actually starts in R2.
Okay,
So R2 is where you'll see multifamily apartments and you start to see that mix happening.
okay.
Justin, I'm sorry, yeah. On my street, I'm R3. Now, if a daycare wants to come in there, can they put parking in all the front yard?
So they would still have to adhere to the requirements of that the city has for screening. And if it was, so let's say it was a daycare center, well, we're considering daycare centers. So if it's a business, it would have to adhere to those business parking requirements. So they have to screen it from the adjacent residential. So they need to plant shrubs.
What about the front yard in general? Can they park in the front yard or do they have to go to a rear?
So there's a maximum lot coverage. I believe it's 45%. I'd have to look. It's either 45 or 50. So they couldn't cover the entire lot or pave.
But they could put a big portion of the front yard in parking lot?
It's possible. It's definitely possible that they
But
could.
you'd have to have a fairly large
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah, if they exceeded the impervious cover for the lot, they would have to get a variance for that. But if they weren't exceeding that, they could potentially put in a drive or some parking in their front yard, yeah. But a resident could do the same with a drive.
And what about fencing for a child play area? Does that have to be in the back or side, or can that be in the front too?
The fencing couldn't be in the front per our fence ordinance. You
Okay.
can only put a decorative fence, a low decorative fence in the front.
Okay.
So, and they are required to do a certain amount of fencing and have a certain amount of play area per the state and local regulations.
Could a child care center possibly qualify on a half lot like the one I live on? Or they have to have a full-size lot, or do you know?
It would completely depend on how many students they were going to have, and if they had the amount of outdoor play area and the amount of indoor play area that they would be required to have. So that, it would all be determined by that.
Okay.
There's a square footage requirement.
Is there a common type of commercial activity on R3 that we currently have? What could you give me?
It depends on where you're at. Center Street is the overlay district. There's more along those residential districts along Center Street because it's intended for that purpose. I would say like home occupations are in R3s, but there's not a lot of commercial activity in R3s, no.
Well, on my street, you've got 3 law offices. And I'm all right with that. They do a great
Yeah.
job, but,
And offices blend
That's
in.
kinda like-
Offices do blend into that environment.
Well, they do. a nice job.
Is Clevenger Insurance on Center, is that in R3? Is that in
I would
commercial?
have to look.
You'd have to look. I just wondered, because daycare center, we're now getting for-profit business, and I know that there's employers that are trying to help, but just some concerns that it would be in a residential zone and no longer need BZA approval, so.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about when this came up before was actually specifying a fence height of 8 feet and on our local ordinance, but I don't see that anywhere on here, just that they have to comply with the fence that's required by the state. But we had talked about that because neighbors had concern and wanted some screening from noise and play equipment and things like that next to their residential property. Is that something that we can look at adding to this ordinance, or is there a reason why that's not carried on in here? Because when we had, that real exhaustive discussion about that, that was one of the things that the neighbors were asking for, was the 8-foot fence to be around the play area.
So our fence ordinance limits the height of fences to 6 already for residential districts. So that would be not in line with our current residential district aesthetic. You could definitely discuss that, and if you decided it could be added to the special exceptions or some requirements. But I think it'd probably do more harm than good to require that. I just think it would be out of character with those existing homes.
Yeah, I'll say Lincoln School was considering 6 or 8 feet, and I asked them to seriously reconsider because it's a neighborhood school, and you put the Fort Knox type 8-foot fence. I just thought that isn't going to be friendly or even look right. So I would agree. I think that kind of stuff should be considered, but I don't know if I'd want an 8-foot high fence near my home. You get what I'm saying. I'd like it to, I don't know how you'd, again, control all this, because I think some might say, I'm the neighbor that doesn't want that. If you're going to put a fence up, I want it under 6 feet or 4 feet so it looks like the rest of the neighborhood.
One thing to
Jeff
consider too, sorry, Jeff.
That's all right.
So one thing to consider too is that home daycares can have about approximately the same amount of kids that you'll see in one of these smaller home-based centers already. So if somebody lives in the house, if they have a helper with them, they can have up to 16 kids already. And with the size of these lots and the size of the houses, you're not going to see much more than that in one of these home-based centers. It's just a way that we kind of open the door a little bit. The commercial districts will probably have more conducive lots and probably be a better fit, honestly, but the R3 district, you're likely not going to see 100 kids running around because it just won't fit the square footage requirement.
In the committee's permitted use in R3, what were like their top 2 or 3 arguments there instead of BZA special exception? What was because I see you've added permitted to C2, the proposed, and then special exception for C3.
I think the idea was that schools are permitted in these areas, and it's just, there's a dense cluster of people, and providing childcare close to where the dense cluster of people would be beneficial to those neighborhoods. So I think that was kind of the overarching idea.
What is the requirement for fencing right now?
So I think that's on the state level. I think they just have to have a fenced-in play area. I don't know the exact specifics on what they need to have.
I know the one by me was a chain link fence of whatever the standard height is or something like that.
You have some footnotes on page 2, Justin, is that what that 50 square foot per child?
Yeah, those are the special exception rules. And the state regulates most of this. We have a few little pieces that we've added.
Okay.
So, and again, you guys have options. You could table it and discuss it, over the next month and come back and then decide, or however you want to if there's more information that you guys would like.
General speaking, the past 6 to 12 months, I'm forgetting, I've read in the paper, how many people have come in applying for a permit or to go before the BZA? Can you ballpark? I won't hold you to it, but
I mean, we've had a couple parties that are interested. I get calls all the time when they're looking at properties, and I'll give them my opinion on whether or not I think the BZA would look upon it favorably. We had one party that purchased a house and then was denied at the BZA level because there were a lot of neighbors that weren't happy about the proposal. And this was in an R1, so we're not proposing any change to R1. But currently, with the special exception, I mean, one could locate in these, let's see here, in an R2 or R3, a daycare could locate there as long as it fulfills the requirements that are on the last page there. So it's already conducive, way more conducive than an R1 to have an R2 or R3 daycare center. We just were seeing if we could open up that R3 to provide some certainty to the daycare providers.
so they don't have to go to the BZA.
Yeah, that was the idea. That
It's
was,
not permitted, Pete, they have to go to the BZA.
yeah, they had, regardless, any zoning district in the city currently, if you want a daycare center, you'd have to go to the BZA.
The new proposal, that would no longer be the case for R3 or C2 zone.
Correct,
Okay. And only those two.
correct.
But on the bottom of that page, it says daycare center shall be permitted in R2 and R3 zone districts, provided that.
Yeah, and we weren't proposing to change those stipulations necessarily. They just wouldn't, if they checked those boxes, like the parking box and the square footage box, which they would already kind of do because of the state. The state has those square footage requirements too. Then they would be permitted by right. So they would still have to fulfill those stipulations at the bottom for an R3.
But where I'm confused is, are we forcing BZA into approving it in R2 if they check those boxes?
Yeah, and that's a special exception. That's already in place. Yeah, so,
So locally.
But like last time, they met the boxes, but the neighbors remonstrated in the R2, and so we,
yeah, that was in an R1, so they didn't.
that was an R1.
Yeah, they needed a full-on use variance to go in there. They didn't actually, they actually applied for and got approved I believe they're in an R2 now, on
Okay.
Park Street, but they got approved in that zone.
okay.
But by leaving the special exception though, in the new proposal in R2, even if they met 1 and 2 by the state, we would still request they come to the BZA to get approval. Is that what you're saying in the proposal?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
So the special exception, let's say I am wanting one in an R2, but I've met the state requirements, do I still have to come to the BZA?
Yeah.
That's what I
Yep.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which right now, unless I'm convinced otherwise, I'm in favor of that. Anything residential actually, but trusting the committee and the board with even the R3, so. I know
Would you
this
like
is.
to make a recommendation, we pass it on to the city council?
As a council member, I'm not sure I'm ready yet until I hear maybe some of the feelings. Are you guys comfortable? Are you wanting the council to look at it? I mean, Diane serves on the board also. Did you serve on the committee, also on this committee that made the recommendation, Diane, or not?
No, I did not.
Okay. I just want to make sure you guys I wouldn't want to make the motion unless we're comfortable.
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
I think
I don't have any objection to any.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty logical.
I look at the amount of space that's needed per person and, the R3 area that I'm always concerned about, we're half lots, it's not gonna go very far in our
Be
area.
difficult.
Yeah, unless you took like Dave Colby's place or something like that.
Yeah.
Any concerns here at the other end of we good?
No, I think, like you were saying, the square footage per person served is what I was looking at, and excuse me, it limits you. I mean, you're gonna be limited already, it's not gonna be a huge service group.
I recommend that we go forward with it and pass it on to the city council.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we provide recommendation to move this to city council?
Thank you, Aaron. So moved. Seconded by Jim Gast. All those in favor? Anyone in opposition? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Justin. Well done.
All right, thanks. And if the council members want to talk to me, and if you guys want any other information before it goes to council, let me know.
Thanks, you're good.
Any other matters before the board? We're
There
down to
being
our
no
last
other
motion.
matters, so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn, seconded.
Second.
Jim Gass, all those in favor?
Aye.
We stand in adjournment.
Well, that comes quick.
Love Tom.
Stop key to the door.
Yep.
That's a pretty good percentage. I think
Anything exciting going on in your life?
No, not really.
How's that pickleball coming?
I haven't been able to play since I had triple hernia surgery.
You still recovering?
I'm just not quite comfortable with it. I'm gonna have a CT done Thursday.
I said last time we talked, you were just getting ready to go in, weren't you? Was that a month ago?
Yeah, that was less than a month ago I had that done.
So it went well, you just have to go.
Yeah, I don't have any pain. It's just-
What's the deal on this mesh? I mean, is the mesh bad?